Hello friends, Jennifer Pearson here, Thistle Gypsy. And I'm here to talk about the Lord of the Rings. Now this deck came as part, and I've done a review of it in the past, but then I never used it, And so I'm going through my decks and trying to see which ones I'm going to keep and which ones I'm going to maybe let go of or put away or something like that. So I got this one out in part because I let go of I've decided to let go of the Fairy Lights Tarot, and that's a deck that I thought might be kind of like a shadow deck for me. And then I thought, well, I might have a shadowy deck right here, and in fact I do, because as you see that awful Eye of Sauron I just showed you, and so I thought, alright, so I'll just see. I had a perception that it had a lot of negative cards, and so the impression from previously looking at it. And I thought, well, I'll just do a spread, and I'll just see what percentage of the cards that come up are negative, and kind of go from there. So I did that Chinese system of elements spread. And either way you look at it, this is pretty bad. So what do I have here? I did the 5 cards, So whether you do my Fairies Oracle 5 cards, or whether you do this Chinese system of elements, the elemental one, it's grim. What I have here is grim. So tell me in the comments if you can see. Now there were positive aspects to this one. So in the center, the thing that is either constant or repeating, I got the dead marshes. The dead marshes. Now, I think in the guidebook that comes with the deck, and they treat it like a game, but really it's primarily a deck. It's more of an oracle deck, really. In fact, as a game, it just completely fails. But as a deck, it's actually interesting and could be used very much as a shadowy kind of a deck. So in the guidebook, he talks about resisting temptation, that there will be a lot of there's a lot of opportunity maybe for poor choices, and to stick with your integrity and to resist any calling in the waters of the marshes. So I will have maybe some tricky footing, trying to stay on solid ground and not get sucked under. So there's the dead marshes. What is rising energy? Saruman. And in this deck, in the guidebook, it emphasizes the darker aspects of his personality, the desire to, maybe he kind of had he ended up getting off track, maybe from a belief that he had powers that would prevent him from falling. This is my perception, not necessarily what it says in the guidebook, from falling under the sway of Sauron, that he himself could be a direct foil, and instead he got sucked in. He's kind of the wizard equivalent of, and now I can't remember his name, the guy from Minas Tirith. Okay, never mind. In any case, so they definitely emphasize in the guidebook the darker aspects of him kind of being a false leader And kind of like with his work with the Palantirs, and he was using the Palantirs as also maybe false medicine, false magic. Anyway, so there's, certainly there was a false aspect, because once he went under the influence of Sauron, he was trying to cover that up. So this is a rising energy, and so I need to watch out for that rising energy there. With the rising energy in this kind of thing, it's something that flares up and can disappear quickly. So it's not necessarily, so there might be like a period of this happening, and then it just dies down and goes away. It's not as bad as the dead marshes that are supposed to be here continually. And then, what is solidifying or concentrating or coming together? Gollum. I got Gollum. So it's like, oh my gosh. The dead marshes, Saruman, Gollum. And I'll just tell you, the next two are Mount Doom and the Orcs. That's my 5-card spread. It really, in many ways, doesn't get much darker than this. Okay, so Gollum. So what can I see? Well, they call Gollum the unloved child. I don't know if he was the unloved child, but that's what they're calling him. But certainly he was very acquisitive. He wanted to, there's the precious, but he also loved his fishies. And, so that's strong, and that's why he ended up with the ring in the first place, is because he saw it glittering down on the bottom of a river and grabbed for it, right? Or maybe it was somebody he was with. Yeah, I think that was it. Somebody he was with grabbed for it. But of course, as soon as he saw it, he wanted it, and, a battle ensued, and death resulted, and stuff like that. So, to me, along with Saruman, this is kind of, and the dead marshes as well, a warning against sacrificing integrity for physical objects, or for, acquisitiveness, the desire to have things. So I'll just leave it at that. That looking at that aspect of my personality seems to be coming out. Gollum is more complex than that. Quite a complicated character, but I'm going to leave it at that for now, because I didn't want this to be a long video. As much as just to show people that if you want a shadow deck, this particular Lord of the Rings deck could do it for you. So, in the water position is Mount Doom. So to me this would be kind of something under the surface, or a resource that's in reserve, like when water forms a water table. Can also be something hidden. So, again, it could be an aspect of personality, something that's drawing you, especially with Gollum here. Something hidden that's drawing me to it. And I think Mount Doom, they call it Mount Doom. I mean, that's the fire from which the ring was originally forged, which is why it needs to return there to be destroyed. And so it is actually a creative place as well. It's just that the wrong person was creating there. At least that's kind of my take on the stories. I mean, it could also be speaking to or a warning about being careful of one's intentions with what you're creating. And lastly, and this is in the growth. This is in the growth position. What is growing is the orcs. Who wants to see that come up in the growth position, in the growing position? Okay, so in the end, it ends up almost being absurdly negative. Trying to think, the orcs in the growing position. You know, maybe encountering more orcish kinds of people. I don't know. I'm not going to try to go too deep with it at the moment. But that did take me back to the deck and say, oh my gosh, so how many opportunities are there for anything positive in here? And there is an imbalance, definitely, toward the negative. Even, you know, you can look at the Misty Mountains, and, you know, they're very beautiful and everything, and they, I'm not going to remember any of the names of anything. You know, Lothlorien is on one side of it, and Rivendell is on the other. Rivendell more snugged up against the Misty Mountains, but the Misty Mountains are seen as an obstacle that has to be gotten across. So it definitely kind of has that Lenormandish obstacle, sort of a negative vibe to it. Let's see, an Old Man Willow is considered negative. I'm just taking out what I consider to be the positive cards. And this is a deck of 40 cards. Mines of Moria, definitely negative. Helm's Deep is a toss-up. I'm going to call Helm's Deep positive. And I'm also going to call Minas Tirith positive. It's another stronghold. But I am going to call the Ghost Army of Dunharrow negative. And the rings, like the 9 rings of men, you know, so this deck goes, you know, kind of covers a long, broad spectrum of the mythos. You know, here it's got Sauron up there, but, you know, were they always intended to control? I can't remember whether or not they were. So this is kind of a toss-up. I'm going to put it in negative because bad things came of it. It's got the 7 rings of the dwarves. And I'm putting that in. I'm putting all the rings in negative. Except for the elves. They managed to hang on to theirs. So they even have Mirkwood. It's like Mirkwood was not in the Lord of the Rings. That was in the Hobbit. And again, I put the Palantirs in the negative. I think that they were, if I recall correctly, they weren't necessarily negative. It depends on whose eye is watching, whose eye is in there. I don't remember if the Palantirs were created by Sauron or simply used by him. Corsairs were negative, and the Black Riders. Even with that 5-card spread I did, I thought, well, maybe the next card is positive. I looked and it was the Black Riders. It's like, no, it's not giving me anything happy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So 19 out of 40 cards I would consider negative. And again, I put the rings for the dwarves. Certainly, did I even have the one ring? Yep, the one ring and the rings for the men. All in there. And then, so if that's 19, and then there's 21 that are positive. So practically even. And I'm trying to see if there's any in the positive that could be taken really as negative. Well, the Helmsteed might be considered negative by some. Or Minas Tirith also might be considered negative by some, but the rest of them would certainly be positive. So there you go, 21. It's kind of a have-these, good and bad deck, but for me, it's totally negative, totally gloomy doomy, unless I want to go ahead and do some work and integrate my inner Sauron and my inner Gollum and my inner orcness, all of that. So there we go. Just a look at the Lord of the Rings Oracle as a shadow deck. And it works in some ways. The guidebook isn't super psychological or anything like that, but certainly I probably wouldn't do a 5-card spread with it again, but I might, for some of my Oracle rambles, I might pull it out and we'll just see if something negative comes out so that we have that aspect included in our oracles, in our Oracle rambles. Or maybe if I finally eventually get back to doing new moon and full moons, maybe I'll pull from that deck. It's a 50-50 gambit in terms of whether we get something lovely or something very shadowy. All right, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.